Hi, Shanna Rowe Jackson here from Caution Artists at Play, and this week I am finally doing the last installment of my 3-part series where I have been trying out the 12 sets of the Holbein Artist Colored pencils. And here we go. This week we are trying the Pastel Tone Set, and I'm very excited about this. I don't usually work with pastel colors, but these are just so beautiful. And I will be using a few of the colors from the other sets from the previous weeks, mainly because this doesn't have a full value range. This is more of a supplementary set, and so it's kind of a wild card set, specialty set. And so it doesn't have a full value range here. Ideally, these will be used with other pencils anyways, and so that's kind of why I waited to do this one last. And just for transparency reasons, these sets were sent to me from Holbein, but I am not being paid by them to do this review. This is simply my opinion on these sets and pencils, as with the previous 2 videos. Well, this is beautiful. This looks like a unicorn. Like, I don't even know. Like, these are the unicorn pencils. Look how gorgeous this looks. So let's look at the colors that we have. We have lettuce green, cobalt green, ice green, sky blue, lavender blue, wisteria, mauve, rose pink, pink, salmon pink, Naples yellow, and then this last one is cream. So the majority of these pencils, light fastness wise, seem to be in the 2 range, and then 2 of them that have the 2 stars. So of the sets, it has the most that are not as light fast as the others. But look how magical that looks. So I'm very excited to start this and start working with these and try them out. I want to kind of see how opaque they are. Actually, I might do a couple swatches with these just to see how well they do on black paper. Okay, so I do have a piece of paper here. I don't remember what brand this is. Had laying in the studio. I just want to kind of see how some of these do on the black paper, because I think that these would be great on black paper. Let me switch sides. Focus a little bit better. Yeah, I think pretty opaque, and that's really, really exciting. And I should mention, as a general, like, they have all the information on the side, the reorder number, things like that. Yeah, this is really pretty on black paper. I don't think I'll be doing my project on black paper, but these are great for use on black paper. So these are kind of, like I mentioned before, the wild card, because they're kind of more of a specialty pencil, whereas these are general purpose sets for the most part. And these ones are definitely more of a specialty set. And so I think that these are good to buy if you already have other brands, but you're having a hard time finding pastel colored pencils in those brands, or just for fun because they're so rainbowy and pretty, and like if you want to start drawing rainbows and unicorns, I mean, I think it'd be perfect for that if you want to work on black paper. But mainly what I'm getting at is I think that this is a good supplemental set. It's not necessarily the set that you'll buy when you're first getting into colored pencil, because it's not going to give you the value range you want. And so the work, if you're only going to do work with these colored pencils, it may come out flat unless, like I said, you start with a dark ground first, but it's going to be very, very flat because you're not going to be able to get the full range of values. So this is something that you might want to buy in conjunction with other colored pencils, either with one of these other sets or just to add to your colored pencil collection, because these colors are difficult to find elsewhere. Here we are at the voiceover, and I have some information for you directly from Holbein. I spoke with one of the co-owners of the U.S. office of Holbein, and he sent me some information that he received directly from the Japan office. Of course, it had to be translated into English, and so that's one of the reasons why it took a little bit to get the information. Their Japanese office has been in an area where there has been some upticks in the pandemic, and so they haven't been able to operate at full staff for a little bit. So, long story short, it took a little bit longer to get the information than any of us anticipated. However, it is here, and I would like to share this information with you, as well as a little bit of the research that I've been doing independently about Lightfast ratings, just to kind of have a better understanding of how things are done, or at least from my personal understanding of how things are done from what I've been reading. I mean, you don't have to take it as 100% gospel, do your own research, but this is how I understand it from what I've read. And I found this to be really interesting because before this, I never really knew how people did Lightfast ratings. I had heard of the ASTM Lightfast ratings, and I have also heard of the Blue Wool, but I didn't really know what all went into that. And so I'm going to share the statement here, and then I'm going to kind of talk to you a little bit about these ratings. Holbein of Osaka, Japan has been producing color for over 120 years. Holbein is acutely aware of and primarily focused on producing exceptional color, which will deliver superb handling characteristics and excellent Lightfast ratings. In accordance with this perspective, Holbein tested their colored pencil line to the ASTM D6901 Lightfast standard for artist colored pencils. The ASTM is an American standard for industrial materials and test methods. So something that I want to note here is that the ASTM D6901 is actually an overarching standard for colored pencils. And under that standard, it covers a lot of other standards. And so they're using the overarching term here because it's not just things like toxicity. There's also the country of origin and the statement of conformance, like all kinds of things fall under this standard. Lightfastness is one of them, and there are actually a couple, I think there's like 4 different lightfastness standards that actually fall under this. And within those standards is a xenon arc test, and you'll hear me mention that further on because that is the type of testing that they do, and I think that's worthy of noting. And I also want to say I have linked some resources below so you can kind of look at the same resources I was looking at when I was trying to research this. So here's their methodology. The first step is to prepare the test specimens for all color lines as per the ASTM D6901 directions. And the second step is to place each test specimen into the weatherometer to be exposed for the xenon arc as per the ASTM D6901 directions. And that sounds like, that really sounds like science fiction. However, in my research, I found that this is a real thing. They're not the only ones testing their products this way. This actually is an industry standard. There actually is a machine called, weatherometer, or also the spectrophotometer. It sounds so crazy, but it's a real thing. Like, it sounds weird, but it's a real thing I have discovered while, looking all this stuff up. So the third step is to use a spectrophotometer to measure and quantify the changes in the test specimens after it has been exposed to xenon arc in the weatherometer. So basically they're simulating weather or simulating sunlight and testing it through this machine. And the fourth step is to quantify the results after using the spectrophotometer and complete a cross-reference using the ASTM D6901 standard to the Holbein Lightfast rating system. So the numbers quantified are indicated by using a lambda symbol. And this part is the part that's kind of confusing, but basically there's this symbol that kind of pops up through their testing results that tells them like what the range is, and anything under a 4 under this symbol would be a Lightfast 1, anything between 4 and 8 would be a Lightfast 2, anything between 8 and 16 is Lightfast 3, and then anything between 16 and 24 would be Lightfast 4, and then anything over 24 is a Lightfast 5. So basically, it says the numbers are quantified indicating this symbol, and the smaller the symbol is, the stronger the Lightfast rating is. And so, if it's below a 4, then it's considered Lightfast 1. And then they, of course, take that information. So that's according to the ASTM. So when I say Lightfast 1, that's according to the ASTM. And then they put their own star rating on it. And their star rating system, their 3 stars cover both Lightfast 1 and 2, which we've seen that in other brands before. Other people, they set up their own rating, and I kind of just wish there was a standard across the board. It would make it easier. I wish everybody who did their Lightfast rating according to ASTM would just put those ratings on there. But we've seen the star symbol before in other brands. It's not unusual. And so their 3 stars represent 1 and 2. And then their 2 stars are, you know, like Lightfast 3. And then their 1 star is considered to be Lightfast 4, and then no star is considered Fugitive or Lightfast 5. And then they do say, no, Holbein artist colored pencils are manufactured with 100% PEFC forest protection certified wood, which is good to know. That's nice to know. So I know that sounds really confusing. All this to say that they do technically use one of the methods that is considered to be an ASTM standard to do their Lightfast ratings. So I did find that information to be pretty interesting. That came directly from Holbein, and do with the information what you will. I will say they're not sending it out to do testing. They actually invested in the machine, but it is a machine that is used as an industry standard to do the testing. So that being said, let's talk about this set. I do want to mention there are still obviously discrepancies between the way Holbein has done their testing and CPSA. I mean, that has not changed from my last video. Of course, the CPSA has their own way of doing their testing that still conforms to these kinds of standards, but it's not, they don't have like the same kind of machine. So they're actually relying on their eyesight to see sudden or even subtle changes in the pigment. And so there is bound to be some discrepancy. I've seen discrepancy in other brands. I do want to mention within this set though, there were quite a few discrepancies, more discrepancies within this set than the prior 2 sets. A lot of the colors in this set are actually considered to be fugitive according to the Colored Pencil Society of America's testing, and that is something to keep in mind. I'm not really surprised about that. Pastel colors generally are not Lightfast. They just aren't. They're not. And so this is, again, why I like to, whether it's an industry standard or not, I mean, there's still room for wiggle room because there are multiple ways for them to test within the standard. And so there's going to be discrepancies between testing. So again, this is why I recommend, if you're part of Colored Pencil Society of America, look at those tests, look at the tests of whatever company you're using, not just Holbein, and make your own decision on what you feel comfortable using. So for me, as I've mentioned in my previous videos, because apparently this whole series has ended up becoming about Lightfastness, if I find something to be considered fugitive in either of the testings that I'm looking at, whether it's Holbein's test or the CPSA testings, I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to chance it. If either of those tests say that it might be fugitive, even if the other one says it's a 3-star or whatever, and I have seen it go both ways. There has been some CPSA ratings that have said that some of these pencils were better than what Holbein said they were. I'm not going to use them. That's just me. I like to have both ways because I'm going to be extra cautious about it. That being said, you do what makes you feel comfortable. But these pencils in particular, they are beautiful. They work wonderful. I love this set. I love the colors. I personally will not be selling this original piece because of the amount of colors in it that the CPSA doesn't really consider to be Lightfast, because I'm not going to take my chances. And it would be the same if CPSA said that they were Lightfast, but Holbein was saying that they weren't. But, okay, so the Lightfastness alone, I wanted to get that out of the way in this video. Now we know how they do their testing, and apparently they do their testing across the board on all their colors, not just their colored pencils, but they use that kind of testing for all their colors, and so now we know. And I will be testing out some other supplies coming up of theirs. I do have some other supplies that I will be testing, some watercolors and some water-soluble oils coming up. And so I just wanted to get this Lightfast business out of the way because I've been talking about it, oh, so much. And I just want to play with supplies and have fun. And I do feel a little bit better now knowing how they do their testing. Okay, so back to this piece. These colors did exactly what I needed them to do as far as this particular piece. I wanted softness. I wanted it to be delicate. I just wanted it to, everything to be kind of just almost dreamlike, and these fit the bill for that. I had mentioned earlier, I did have to bring in some darker colors, otherwise this would have been a very flat drawing, but I do think these are beautiful on black paper. I think that they are just gorgeous colors to begin with. They are a strong pencil, just like the rest. Obviously, they're made the rest of the way the rest of their pencils are made. They have very strong pencils. They're soft, they're easy to blend, they're beautiful, and they are a high quality pencil as far as breakage goes. There's no breakage, there's none of that. They're comfortable to hold. As I mentioned, the only downfall to this particular set is the Lightfast ratings. And that's in both. Like, they're the lower rated ones out of all 3 sets according to Holbein too. So that's really the only downfall that I have for this set. So if you're planning on selling your artwork, you may not want to go out of your way to get it, but if you're fine with just creating pieces to have prints, because they are beautiful colors, and I feel like I haven't seen colors. I mean, other brands have pastels, but not quite the range that I've seen here. And so if you want to do this so that you can sell prints and things like that, or if you just want to have them to play around with, they're perfect for that. I do think that obviously the other 2 sets that I've already reviewed are the more versatile sets of the 3. And so just keep that in mind. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to mention, I used that same method here that I used in my previous video, where I scribbled some of the pigment down and used the Melts Colored Pencil Blender to lift and to put it on the paper. And it worked beautifully, of course. It was perfect for petals. And I tried testing that out with some OMS, and the OMS left a pretty nasty stain for a very long time. It took a long time to dry off the paper. It stained the paper in a way that I didn't like, which is what I suspected, because I've worked with OMS for years, and if you don't have enough layers of pencil down, it's going to do that. Whereas the melts, you can make your regular colored pencils into watercolor essentially and paint it right on with the melts, and it doesn't seem to stain the paper, and you'll know immediately if you have the value you want, because it's not darkening the paper in the same way that OMS does. And the OMS took a lot longer to dry, and even then, like I said, it kind of left a bit of a stain and went through the paper. And so I did test that out. I know people have been asking, and I didn't like it with OMS as much. So for that method, I will definitely be using the melts from now on. And I'm really, really hoping they come out with a larger bottle of melts, because that stuff is magic. So now I'm just going through and putting in the details of this flower. This is actually, I love this flower. I have this out in my front yard. And it is just, I don't know, it just makes me happy to look at. It makes me think of fairy hats. Like, I feel like fairies would wear these as hats. It's a foxglove. That's the name of it. And this one's like a peachy kind of colored foxglove. I don't remember the specific name. My husband planted it for me. And oh, it just makes me happy to look at. And once I took the reference photo, I knew, I'm like, this is going to be the one that I use to test the pastel pencils out with. And I actually took the photo at dusk. And so that's why it was kind of like a little bit hazy in the air, and everything's kind of got a little bit of a blue tint in the background, and I just love it. And you can kind of see the blurred out trees in the background, and one of those is my apple tree that I have out front. I've used that for inspiration for a lot of my drawings in the past. But yeah, so this was the smallest piece of them all, which made it a little bit more difficult to get detail, which is why even blowing it up to get prints I don't think is necessary. However, I did end up using this to make a birthday card for my grandmother. So I took a Strathmore watercolor card that I had, and I glued this to the front of it, and I made her a homemade birthday card with it, because it ended up being the perfect size for that, and she loved it. And that just made me really happy. I'm just going through and scraping out. One thing I loved about these pencils in general, in every video that I've done with them, is how easy it is to scrape layers off for the layers below. There's some pencils that kind of sink in a different way, and that makes it more difficult to kind of do some scraping without damaging the paper, but I didn't have that issue here. And I believe I've been using the Arches Hot Press watercolor paper for this series. They really are beautiful colors though. I wish that somebody would come out with a pastel specific line that is just completely Lightfast. You can find some pastel-ish colors in some of the Lightfast lines that are out there, but these make me think of rainbows and unicorns and everything that's happy in the world, and I just wish they were more Lightfast. But again, I mean, I'm a one-note wonder over here with that. I am very excited to try out some of the other products by Holbein. They do have quite an interesting range of things, and I've heard that their watercolors are really, really vibrant, so I'm interested in trying those out. And yeah, I'm just really excited about it. Okay, so here is my final little drawing. This one was a lot of fun. I actually did this a lot quicker than the other ones because it's the smallest of the three. And I wanted it to be really soft, and these definitely were perfect for those soft, subtle tones. And there's no denying, look how pretty these are. I do kind of want to play with them on black paper at some point. But I am pretty happy with the way it came out. I'll show you. There are some pencils that I brought in to kind of help me out with this drawing. I brought in black, I brought in white, I brought in sepia so that I could have a nice neutral tone to tone some of these things down. I had my magenta set aside from my last drawing. I didn't have to use it a whole lot, but I did do like a few dots in here with it and things like that. And I brought in this green as a warmer green. Sorry. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's done. I have to be done with it. I brought in forest green for some of the darker greens, especially in these leaves, but in the background, indigo to kind of cool down the black tones in the background. And then olive drab to warm up some of the greens, some of my darker greens, because these are all pretty much the same value. So I ended up having to bring in other colors, which I knew I would plan on doing. Some of these came from my other sets. Some of these are ones that I had open stock. However, they are all Holbein. But yeah, it definitely did they did what I needed them to. I will not be selling this original piece. I'm going to try and scan it and see if I can get a good scan to sell prints, but it's so tiny that it's probably going to be somewhat difficult to sell prints of it as well. However, I did really enjoy myself drawing this. It was a great way to just kind of relax, and this piece was more about the color than it was the details, which is another reason why I was fine with working small. I mean, there's obviously still some detail there, but it's still not as highly detailed as my other pieces, which is fine. It's got this beautiful summery softness that I was looking for. So that is my experience with these pencils. I hope that you have enjoyed this series. I'm not sure what I'm going to be working on next week. I think I want to switch to paint because I've been working with the pencils for a while. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this. I agree with my original assessment that this is a supplementary set. I think that this is fun to maybe add to one of the other sets if you buy one of the other 12 sets, or just to have on hand. However, as I mentioned earlier in the videos, you do need to be mindful of light fastness on these particular pencils if you plan on selling your work. But other than that, I think they're beautiful. They work just as well as the rest of the pencils. They're nice and opaque, and they're just so soft and beautiful and precious looking that, you know, they're just undeniably beautiful. And I enjoyed myself, and that's all you can expect. But, okay, thank you so much. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you enjoyed the series, and I hope that this has made it easier for you if you were on the fence about buying a particular set of these pencils. I will see you next week. Have a great day. Bye.